Okay. Welcome to the Milford Board of Selectmen meeting, February 12th, 2018. First order of business is the signing of the warrant.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous. Second is the approval of the January 22nd minutes.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Second those as well, Mr.
And I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous. First public hearing and scheduled appointment is Starbucks Common Victualler License. You want to come on up? If you just introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name's Daniel Brennan. I assist Starbucks with their permits and licenses. We have a new store, Milford Crossings, currently under construction. Planned opening is first week in April. 48 seats inside, 24 outside, just over 2,300 square feet.
Great.
Drive-through location.
Good, it's looking good. We have a department head review form. Building commissioner notes that it's under construction. Planning board special permit and site plan approved on 2/21 of 2017. Obviously, no outstanding taxes, no liens. The fire department has no objection, and the police chief has no issues or concerns. We do have a revised plan. Of course, you gave us already some of the specifics. This is a common vitular. The pleasure of the board?
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Just got to ask you this question. So we built a brand-new super Stop and Shop, and you got a location in there, and then you're going to put a store across the parking lot.
It's inside a Stop and Shop.
The night you and I were there, wasn't it in the corner?
I didn't know if that was a Starbucks or not, or their own cafe.
I swore it was a Starbucks.
I'm not sure, but it's certainly not corporate-owned, so they have very few, what they call licensed stores, which is like franchisees, so you'll see them in like Targets and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not sure on that.
Just a question, but welcome.
Thank you.
Bill, any questions or comments?
No, certainly the Starbucks franchise and business is known to many of us. So, you know, everything I've seen from their operations, everything I've seen nationally and locally, I have no concerns about as it relates to how it would, you know, site in the town of Milford, so I have no concerns on product or the company. And with the department head reviews, it looks like everything is in order.
It is. Is there a motion?
I'd move to approve the common victualler license for 138 Medway Road, the Starbucks Coffee.
Would second that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll also vote in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you, Daniel. Have a
luck.
good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Next scheduled appointment is with our benefits coordinator with an update. Kelly? How are you? Gentlemen?
I brought my team, my support.
Team.
my
It's a good team.
support. Like my memo said, it's been a little over 2 years since the benefits department was created. I didn't know if you had any questions for me, but I listed a couple of topics I wanted to bring up.
The floor is yours, and if we have questions, we'll follow up.
Okay. The first was a request by me to replenish the health insurance mitigation account. And I know Mr. Buckley was on the board at the time. It was instituted in 2012. Actually, there was in my memo, it says it went into effect in May, but it was adopted by the board in January of 12. Part of the municipal health insurance, I can't remember the reform, sorry.
Oh, that's what you're talking about, because that was the reform that
That was the
resulted in the
Reform
one,
Act.
the million.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm sorry. The part of it, according to Mass General Law 32B, 21 to 23, the town adopted to make changes to the health plan structure based on a format of the GIC. They voted to do that, and there was a significant decrease. There was significant savings. So what the law stated was it had to be shared among the town and the employees. So I stated in the memo how it was shared at the time. And part of that was a $100,000 mitigation for high claims users. That is going to be depleted, I expect, this fiscal year.
That was part of our goals and objectives.
Yes.
We discussed it as well.
At the time, I was not on the board, but I know when it was brought to the board, they were pretty enthusiastic about it and said, come back and maybe this is something we can replenish when the time comes. I didn't think it would last 5 years, to be honest.
I'm
but
actually surprised it did too.
I
yeah.
know, I'm quite surprised. But as of today, the balance is just over $9,300 for the fiscal year. And we've been spending, paying out more than that
Okay.
each year. So,
If I could just say, I think that's a very important part of what you offer here. So hopefully that's something that's going to continue going into the future.
it is, popular with the people that have, utilized it. People don't utilize it all the time, but if they have high claims, it's a little help.
Absolutely.
So I was hoping to get a vote of the board to support
article.
putting an article on the warrant to replenish that account.
I imagine you will.
The second item I wanted to talk about is the flex spending account that we offer to the employees. We've had it for about 5 years. And when an employee signs up for the flex spending or dependent care account, they're responsible for an annual maintenance fee of $59.40. We've been, over the past 5 years, have had excess funds in the account, and I kind of averaged it out, and it would cover maybe about 75% of the cost of our current enrollment. So I wanted to see if the town would be willing to take on that administrative fee going forward, starting with our open enrollment in May.
So you'd need a vote on that as
I
well.
would need a
Yeah.
vote on
Okay.
that.
Just a little history on it too, the accounting behind it, it's one of those use it or lose it type
Yes.
programs. So if you don't use it, that's where this buildup of money is what Kelly's talking about. And it's actually created a debit in one of our withholding accounts, which is basically
He doesn't
money
like
that we have.
And then you're actually going to pay, if we support this, which I like the idea of it anyway, you're going to cover the maintenance fee for the people who've paid into it anyway. It's their money, really,
Correct,
more or less, right?
more or less,
Right.
yes, exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it may not cover 100% of the cost, that's why I'd like,
Yep.
a vote on it to, and there could be a year where we don't have the significant amount of excess funds. And it would, I can't guarantee what percentage
course.
it would be. I'm just looking at the history of the account.
Oh, but it's also a good gesture to our employees as well.
And if that situation were to happen, we would envision just charging any difference to the health insurance budget.
Great.
And as you stated in the memo, we're not talking significant dollars.
No,
you know.
with today's enrollment, and granted, I think the maintenance fee has stopped some people from enrolling. So I do think enrollment would pick up, but with today's enrollment, it's about $5,000 a year. So,
That's on the private sector. Talking about flexible spending, we have the same thing at work. We have the hardest time getting people to get enrolled, and it's such a great benefit.
It is, yeah.
It's unbelievable. And Zach, you talk about, you either you use it or you lose it. At the end of the year, you can find glasses, you can find a way to spend the money,
and we have adopted where $500 of the flex spending,
And
if
carry
you can
over
roll
to
it
the-
into the next year.
Correct.
So, as long as,
Ended care also. right? Yeah.
well, the dependent care is a separate account, so,
Yeah.
it was slow to start, I will admit. I don't know why, but it was very slow to start. But most of the people that have tried it, have re-enrolled every year and then some.
It's pre-tax too.
Yep,
I know.
It's like a no-brainer.
good thing.
Yeah.
It was a new concept. right?
Yeah. The first year we did it,
It
we
was
had
more out
about,
of pocket,
Yeah,
so,
yep, exactly, that's the kind of benefit. you
yeah, they have
get.
to weigh, they have to balance it, right?
Exactly.
right.
And it's hard for some
I
employees.
think the first year we had around 12 to 15 enrollees. Now we're up to around 84.
Yeah,
So.
that makes more sense.
It's still very low, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
surprised.
it is.
Wow.
But I have had some people mention the maintenance fee. They didn't want to do it because they weren't going to allot a high enough amount to make it worth their
Okay.
while. So I think it would pick up some, maybe, some people that allotted for a smaller dollar amount for the year.
Save $80, but spend 60, really.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and that's all post-tax, so,
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
so that I was looking for a vote on that this
Okay.
evening. The third item was something that was brought to my attention, to look into an opt-out program for the health insurance. I, did a little bit of homework on it, but I was kind of hoping to see where the board wanted me to go with this,
Well, I will say the opt-out payment is pretty much regular business, both in the private sector as well as in state government. If I know that if I took on my wife's, then I would get, I don't even remember what the dollar amount is because I've always carried it, but you get a payment.
Right,
And
the
that's
one-
what this is, right?
The ones I've read, the person would have to be in the plan for the previous 12 months, and then opt out.
Okay.
And they would get, I don't know what kind of dollar amount you were looking to.
Well, it says you surveyed some other towns. Is there a ballpark, or is there an average, or are they all over the place?
Around just 15 to 2,500, but I don't know if that's what.
Still a huge savings to the town when they,
Oh, exactly. I mean, if the criteria is that they need to be in for the previous 12 months, I don't know if we'd get a lot of people doing it.
Okay.
But I can definitely
And
gather
some-
more from,
In some of Kelly's, there, we're kind of seeing that there seems to be criteria that's all over the place, so we were trying to narrow that down and kind of see what we really want to do as far
well,
as.
if people opted out, 18 months ago, and now this comes, they're obviously not gonna, obviously get that benefit.
Right.
A couple of months, so
Yep.
I wonder if that could cause some strife.
that was a concern of mine.
Okay.
We have employees that have been here and have never utilized the benefit. So my concern is those individuals may come up,
Yep.
want a piece of the pie.
And we're not totally sure if this would have to be impact bargained amongst the unions as well. So again, just preliminary
was-
here with data, just we're in no position to really be making a recommendation right now, but wanted to kind of get some feedback and see where
I mean,
I'd like
obviously,
us to go with it.
I mean,
Yeah, town council did tell me it would have to be impact bargain with all the
yeah,
unions.
my first hunch is it makes sense in theory, but I think we would probably want to give you guys a message, I mean, depending on where my colleagues are, that, keep investigating and keep on that way. I think the other two are pretty straightforward,
Okay.
unless you're looking for more than that.
No, I just wanted to see if that's something you want
I
me to.
know that's the norm in a lot of ways, and you seem,
Right.
is that your feeling
I
as
had, I
well?
didn't see a lot of municipalities that do it, but there are some.
Okay.
I didn't know where you wanted me to go with it or how,
It's big in the private sector, when you can,
Right.
I hate to use the word push, but put an employee on to somebody else's health
Right,
insurance.
right.
It's definitely
I
to
hate
your
to say it, what
advantage.
I'm seeing nowadays are the private sector plans. The deductibles are so high compared to what we have right now. I don't know if that would be,
Yeah.
how much would be that push.
Right.
Yeah, some people get public sector positions to even cover the health insurance.
Right.
Right.
Bill?
Yeah, I don't know to take it first to last or last to first, but let me look at first of all, let me say this. Kelly, again, I've said this before, I want to say it again. The feedback I receive on you is always overwhelmingly positive.
Thank you.
You're dealing with people who are having life events continually as a benefits coordinator. The sensitivity and care that you provide to our retirees and our employees is outstanding, and I just want to tell
I
you,
enjoy working with them.
I can tell, and, only somebody who enjoys their job that much can do so well and get that type of feedback continuously. And so your credit to other employees and your department, and just
Thank
keep
you.
up the good work.
I appreciate that.
If
Thank
you don't hear that enough, you should. And so I apologize for those times I haven't said
No,
it when
you've
I see
always
you.
been very complimentary. I appreciate that.
Well, you earned that. Nobody gave it to you, right? With regard to health insurance mitigation account, it's a separate warrant article for $100,000. And, I think as long as the town can afford health insurance mitigation, I think we should look to do that.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. And what we're talking about are, major life events for catastrophic health,
Right.
where somebody is impacted generally with things like cancer. It makes sense. Not, the town isn't always going to pay the most for a position when people are given the option of going private sector or public sector. But with something like this in the retirement, our ability to, I am always looking for opportunities to attract and retain. And, hopefully this gets us the qualified candidates, and when we get them, it has them stay. And it isn't by itself going to do anything, but that cumulative effort of, a caring community that looks to mitigate, catastrophic health issues is just one contributor to that overall goal.
Yes.
So, you have my support, and I appreciate you bringing it forward. I don't know if we want to, I can put it as a motion, and then we'll go to the second one. You want to just break it up, Mr. Chairman? It's up to you.
Yeah, I think we should break it up, but Mike, do you have any questions or comments
I
before?
just have a couple
we
of
go to
comments.
motions?
On the first, the insurance mitigation, we use a very similar format of this at work. And we talk about it all the time, is that you can't get focused on the highly compensated employees. You need to focus on everybody. And there's a great statement in here, is that, you end up in the hospital and you got $1,000 deductible. Well, that $1,000 deductible could be a real killer to somebody, and that's an awful word to use, but I mean, it could be real hurtful. And, we as a company focus on what can we do to take care of everybody. And so I'm a firm believer in this. I see employees take advantage of it. It's helpful to them. So I agree. I agree with everything that Selectman Buckley said about you. I think your department is flawless, as all the departments in the town are, I think. But I think you do a great job. And, benefits to an employee means so much. And the ability to go to somebody and get an answer when you need an answer. Because think about it, if somebody's coming to you with a question about health benefits, it's probably not a good thing.
Right.
And so now the anxiety level is up high, and either, they themselves are hurting, or somebody in their family or whatever. And to be able to go into a department and get the answers that they need, and possibly say, you know what, I'll get back to you tomorrow, and you do get back to them tomorrow. So, I agree, great job, and Mr. Chairman, I would fully support that as well.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to put the health insurance mitigation account in the amount of $100,000 on the article for the warrant for the May annual town meeting.
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous.
Now, regarding the maintenance fees and the flex spending, you're looking, I just want to make sure I understand that you're looking for a $5,000
That would be.
warrant article for that purpose?
Not
This is just a vote of this board, right?
Yes, correct.
I believe it's, right,
Yeah.
yes.
It's already in the account.
We believe I think we have at least 1 year's worth, if not more.
Okay.
Of access
And you'll
funds.
see us you'll see us again if something would change.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we figured we'd keep you posted along the way.
So you're looking for a motion using the excess from this account
Yes.
to put a $5,000, I don't know what to call it.
Basically to allow us to use the excess to pay for the maintenance fee rather than the employee
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, with that,
utilize. Yeah.
I would make a motion to allow the team to utilize $5,000 in excess funding that exists in the flexible spending account to offset employee maintenance fee annual costs that today are approximately $59.40.
One question, two questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So I just want, for clarity, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So this is is the term we use all the time, use it or lose it. So
Correct.
this is money that's sitting in our account that
We've
employees
already
left
accumulated,
behind.
correct.
Correct.
Now,
Yes.
we're gonna use this to try and entice more employees that, as a town, we're gonna pay their maintenance fee, and hopefully they'll get on flexible spending. So it's a way that we're gonna try and encourage our employees. I would second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous.
And Mr. Chairman, just if I might, if nothing else, these funds come from the employees. So even if it doesn't expand the way we might hope,
It's,
that money is going back to individuals who are paying into this fund for this purpose.
correct.
So it just makes sense from a lot of ways you can look at it.
Great.
Absolutely.
And lastly, Mr. Chairman, opt-out payments. I think we ought to look at every opportunity we can. I think, given town council has opted to retire, we're going to be dealing with a different town council. We'll be working this through. My expectation is we'd have a year and a half, 2 years by the time this went through impact bargaining. And my suggestion is to continue to get data, and specifically the data that I think would be helpful is what are the current benchmarks that exist from other communities? How are they doing it?
Right.
You said there's lots of variation.
I have just a brief, informal,
Yeah, but I would do it in a spreadsheet just to do some comparisons. The other thing is, I don't know why we wouldn't allow, and I'd like you to think about it, because I don't want to steer you in any one direction, but why we wouldn't allow opt-out upon onboarding employees. If employees are onboarding, they're new employees, and they opt out of insurance, I don't know why we wouldn't include that, but I'm sure the analysis might tell us why.
Yeah,
And so I'd leave that open, but consider it. Just consider it as,
definitely.
because I know if I opt out the day I onboard, later in that calendar year, there's an opt-out provision for some return of some dollars back to me as an individual.
Okay.
And that's available first year. So,
that's what I
Something to
was
think about.
hoping for feedback like that from
Yeah.
the board to see where
that was my feedback. I
to
don't
look
know
into.
what else there might be.
No,
Hoping we can
agree.
actually call and talk to someone as well and kind of see how the program's
Yeah.
going and whatnot,
I need to see the data, see how it affects us. So I'm in favor of it. I just need to see how it's gonna impact us.
I will bring you updates, I guess, and I'll look into it further.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for everything.
thank you.
Thank you, nice
Thank you very
job.
much.
Now, are you sticking around?
I am.
All right.
Yep.
You have them up here?
Yeah. You get to go home first?
I don't know how that, I don't know how that worked out.
But it worked
Thank
out.
you, Kelly. So, I was in front of the board a couple weeks ago, and we were discussing the FY19 goals and objectives. And at that time, I was not prepared to have a budgetary directive yet, as the state numbers just simply were not out yet. And obviously, a very large portion of our revenue stream. So really wanted to wait and minimally see what the governor had put out and kind of make some tweaks from there. Governor's numbers are very impressive. I'm kind of shocked, to be honest with you. It was over 5% overall. Cost assessments go up too. And before I forget to mention this, I want to make sure I do. Under the assessments on the bottom right-hand category there in parentheses, I have $50K for the MWRTA. It says finally the first year we're going to see it as an assessment. And again, I was kind of surprised to see exactly 50 grand, which is what it should have been. But I kind of thought that there'd be phone calls or whatever, state, that which means the state aid kicked in of 125 grand. We had already paid at the end of fiscal 17 the 75,000 from Chinar, so I was a little afraid that was going to get lost in translation there, but it did not, so that's a good thing. So we're looking at 50,000 for the assessment, already embedded there. My understanding also is this is an estimate, and that once they actually close their books for 18 is when like the real numbers will come in, but this is a good sign, put it
Always
that
be a
way.
year lagging.
Yeah. Kind of business as usual with the left-hand side of revenue. I always say Prop 2.5 is highly predictable because it is. It's 2.5% over what you could have taxed in the previous year. We're using 600,000 this year for estimated new growth. Typically been using 500, but the past few years have been over 800,000, which has been pretty fantastic. And all indications say that we're probably going to be around the 600 again. So figure get a little more realistic with that figure. Big feature here to really note is on the cherry sheet. It says first round, however, that 28.3 million is filtered down a little bit to a 4.25%. Again, this is kind of the conservative nature of myself and Paul Abadanza when we built this, because we don't know if the governor's budget is going to stand. So there is from a variance of what the governor has of around $400,000 to the positive. So that, again, is a good sign, but at this point in time, we're tasked with presenting a balanced budget, so we use that figure for now, just again, to kind of be conservative in case as it goes through the next rounds, it gets cut a little bit. Sewer department, just using a 2%, it's offset on the other side, so that's in and out wash there. Local receipts, using similar numbers, we kind of pick some of the big ones like motor vehicle excise and escalate them a little bit. We use the 2% factor. Other than that, a lot of them do come out in the wash. Last year, I was asked by this board as well as the FinCom to kind of tighten up, go a little less conservative, more realistic on the local receipts, and we did. So pretty happy with the results of final revenue versus budgeted for last year was 99.97%. Doesn't get much better than that. So,
Outstanding.
yeah. So this, we figured that was a really good target. Like I said, a couple accounts that we knew were either going to fluctuate up or down, we adjusted, but for the most part, it's pretty spot on. Switching over to the right side, if we take your attention to the bottom right-hand side where this is most of our goals and objectives we discussed at the last meeting, we have, again, built into the raise and appropriate level, making sure we continue our stabilization contribution of $500,000. Overlay, which that kind of, Will and I, we talked about this at one of our meetings where with the Modernization Act and the elimination of multiple accounts, we thought there might have been a situation where it could have had the Department of Revenue say you don't need an overlay. After discussions with the last tax recap, they basically said our books are so good we can use the numbers still. So that's kind of no longer a concern for me, which is good. I was worried about a one-year lump, if you will, that could have disrupted how we're doing things here. Assessments are the actual number. We didn't monkey around with that to say at all. That's the number that the governor's using. Usually spot on as it goes through the various stages, so we use that number. Capital projects of 1.5 mil, and then we use for the excess levy capacity like the exact number is last year, which is really meant to start us off on an even playing field. So that was 3.29 million. Top portion, as I always say, the operational budget, by and far our largest expenditure for the year. That'll happen in May at the annual town meeting. We went through and kind of backfilled based on the cherry sheet figure and all other known goals and objectives, what we want to do. And we're using a 2.5% across the board on departments. You see some footnotes on the bottom there that do specify certain increases that we know realistically will not be 2.5%, such as retirement appropriation. We discussed that at the last meeting about trying to achieve fully funding status a couple of years earlier, which bumped us up 1 point from a 5.5% increase to a 6.5. So subsequently, the retirement board did vote to adopt the 6.5% funding schedule. Therefore, here's the figure here built into the anticipated budget. Health insurance, we're using, as of now, 6.5. Kelly did not discuss renewal rates purposely because it's still in negotiations or discussions with the Insurance Advisory Committee. However, I do feel like that's a very realistic number. So that should be safe and good for now, and she'll be before you wearing that cap at some point in the near future. So we can tweak that as necessary. We know that with the Personnel Board study, this will be year 3. There are a lot of people anticipated to step, which are not 2.5% in between, looking more like 3.5. So the directive I'd like to come out with this year, which I'd like to discuss with you guys now, and then the Finance Committee on Wednesday, would be to build your salary and wage budget based on known contractual obligations. I say known because at the last meeting, I also described how we have 3 or 4 of the larger unions that will be expired this year, and more than likely will not be negotiated by the time budgets are due to be submitted. So known contractual obligations, and then to level fund general expenditures, and if that is not feasible, to bring forward into the
Exceptions.
Selectmen, FinCom, town meeting. You know?
Very similar to how we do it at school committee. We build the budget on contractual agreements that we know we have.
Yep, I think the school is one of them that, I know they are, teachers is one of them that will be expired. Yep. August.
And the deficit for school choice, Zach, that hits the general fund, right?
It does, that is correct. Yep, I have that number with me. Let's see. School choice for FY19, governor's budget, $1,287,892. Which is very similar, it actually went down from last year at $1,292,000, so pretty.
The governor's
that
numbers?
is Correct,
Yeah.
yep. They did a lot of focus on unrestricted general government aid, that's where the largest percentage had come in. But in relative to the total amounts, you're talking 3 million compared to Chapter 70 of 24 million.
Yeah, and do you know if there's any dialogue with the, maybe Mike would be better, well, I won't ask Mike, he's a member of the Board of Selectmen while sitting here, but do you know any discussions with the FinCom about getting that number down so it's not such a large deficit?
I know there's continuous discussions. I actually did a little bit of work on that for a couple members in the past month. And I know it's also been discussed at the last school budget committee meeting with the FinCom subcommittee.
It wasn't that long ago, it was a positive variant, it was a moneymaker.
Yeah, I actually I have just updated an analysis. I wish I brought it now, but I can get that to the board if you'd
Yeah, I'd
like.
be
That
interested
shows
in
a
that.
trend analysis,
Yeah.
and you're exactly right. The net was a positive, and it's kind of flipped the other way.
Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, not to stay on that, but great work. Overall, with the things under your control, and the guidance that you're providing as a finance director and your staff, I feel more confident about this year's budget than I have in past. I haven't been worried necessarily, but, I noticed that you're providing information for us so that you're also demonstrating where you're building process around what you're doing so that people can have the opportunity to make requests for new employees or.
Yeah, I didn't get to that. Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And I'll let you talk about that because process is just as important as, sometimes the net numbers. Sometimes we can get to the numbers in a lot of different ways, but building process around it makes sure that it's sustainable. So I'll let you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always preach internal control is like the
Yeah.
best way to have your fingerprint on the finances and all sorts of different high-level management and whatnot. But having a nice process together, I think it's been working really good in capital and kind of translating this into new hire request. So I've been here for 8 years now, and it's always seemed to be, you don't know about it, it pops up, you're in the middle of a budget, or budget's done, budget time's over, and you're now bringing it forward now. So it makes it very hard to predict and to plan for the future. So at your request, Selectman Buckley, we had put together this, which intended to enhance communication between departments, this board, other boards, FinCom and town meeting, to be able to assess the necessity to continue our balance of high-level service to taxpayer cost, all that. And to really, what I wanted to see out of this is a full circle examination, if you will, from not only the need, but the budget impact, the tax impacts, even as far as things as office space and computer stations and all that. So health insurance as well. So you kind of think a new hire, you might just be stuck on salary or hourly, but it's really a lot more to that. We talk a lot about OPEB and pension costs. I mean, it all comes hand in hand. So really trying to make this an all-encompassing analysis, if you will, and just to provide exposure and be able to discuss some of these topics.
So with that, Chairman,
Yeah.
just jumping out there.
That's okay.
Because I appreciate this process, and when it looks for approval, couple of things. Supervisor approval and department head approval. Does that mean the board that governs that budget approves? It's just something to think about. If there's a health board or parks department, do you have where is it that you seek to approve and gain the support of the various, elected officials who have responsibility over that budget?
The way I would envision this is having the board of using health, for
Yeah,
example,
just an
would be the one that would be filling this out rather than the department head. I'm sure the department head would go to the board, they would start there, they would fill this out. I mean, I would really like to see.
May want to add that as guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
I would really like to see, even with those board, park, or elected officials, to still come forward to the Board of Selectmen, because it is one town, it is one budget. I would still, I know they don't need to, but I would like to see that come full circle. I'd like to see my involvement, the town administrator's involvement, as well as the selectmen and the FinCom, before actually building it into your budget and taking it to town meeting.
And then the second piece of it is, no, I'm sorry, I'll make a correction, Mike. I was going to say, it doesn't say where this goes to. Where does this finally end up?
The way I also see it is to compile them, and it's kind of similar to capital projects, to compile them and then have a annual review from the board here, as well as the finance committee. So, I mean, to answer your question, I would say.
Oh, where would they get filed, either way it goes?
Administrator.
Okay.
I understand your question properly, like, where will these requests be kept?
Yeah, so the Board of Health wants to add a part-time position. Is it the expectation? Because the routing makes it unclear to me who might just file and maintain that
Yeah,
documentation.
well, what I'd like to see, sorry to cut you off, but what I'd like to see is this be submitted as part of the budget package on an
Gotcha.
annual basis, and then they will be compiled. I'm sure I will also keep a copy, but I would
Okay.
see it being with the town administrator.
Makes sense. So, it's a process. We can, like any process, it can be modified, adjusted annually, periodically, and improved over time. Okay.
I think what's important to speak to Selectman Buckley's topic of process. These are the kind of things that we use every single day, and what people lose sight of is that when you hire an employee, the most important thing you want to do is have that employee start their first day and be in their job, doing their job. And if you don't have things like this, one person misses the process, the first day the employee starts, guess where they are? In human resources, or, because somebody skipped the process. And it's so key, because the first day that they start, you want them in their workstation, whatever it is, whether they're working in the office, working in the shop, working in the showroom, wherever they are, the diner, you want them doing the job that you hired them to do, and that's why you have to have process. I looked this over, I thought it was very well put together. I think it's necessary. I voiced my concern, I still don't understand it as, you're gonna throw a term out there, $100 million a year corporation. We don't have some form of human resources, but I'll keep that to myself right now. But I think this is a start. This is a start. So I would definitely say, great job, so.
Nice work, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You may
Thank you
want to,
for-
you may want to make a comment that auditing just came in.
Oh, yeah, audit was last week. It was pretty wild. There was 8 of them there at one time, so it was a
Were they
busy week.
training, or what were they?
Just all hands on ship. So this is first audit here. You've had many audits, but
How were they, Tom?
Well, very good.
Yeah.
I mean, par for the course.
Yep.
But I think from the feedback from the auditing team, they were very impressed with the, the level of information we had, how willing we were to provide the information for them. And to Zach's credit, we sat in on one of the meetings, and he was asking questions of them that typically they wouldn't receive from other towns, thinking that the town's trying to hide something,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So,
You just openly ask questions
Yeah,
about
yeah.
challenges.
Yeah.
I take advantage of the opportunity.
Sure.
You know?
and their final statement was that they wish all towns would be as efficient as
Love hearing
Zach is. Yeah, no question about it.
And that's a valid point, Tom. When you work with the general public like I do, and people get to know you, people walk up to you and say, "You're from Milford, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I live in, I won't mention any towns, but I live in such and such. How do you people do it?" I said, "Good people that care, and good financial management, and everybody, rowing the boat in the same direction. From your department, the finance committee, the board of selectmen, the school department, the highway, all the departments all working together to pull this community in the right direction. And that's how we're able to do what we do."
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Rick, you're gonna do that in admin? snow
Yeah, I'll
and
take
ice?
care of that
Okay,
for you, yeah.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, take care.
Nice job.
Okay. Next agenda item is Town Administrator's Report. Rick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of items tonight. First, as requested, I reached out to Ardar regarding their plans for the closure of their Milford plant located at 1 National Street. The closure is anticipated next month. I did speak with Jim Warner. He is in their Risk Management and Government Affairs Department. He informed me that when the plant ceases operations, they will hire a professional security company to provide security for the building and premises. They have not yet determined any future use for the building. He anticipates it will be used as a warehouse for a brief period of time. Right now, there are no current plans to shut off utilities. They are planning a job fair for the employees. I also have learned, and I think the board is aware, that Senator Fatman and Representative Murray have also contacted Ardar representatives, and they are willing to provide assistance to the company and its employees through available state programs at that level. So Mr. Warner stated that he would keep me updated so that I may update the board. Zach did mention, but he has completed the Schedule A financial report for fiscal year 17. It has been processed, it has been approved by the Department of Revenue Division of Local Services. I know this is a great deal of work for him and his department. It's a complete, detailed report of the financial activity for the fiscal year, and there are repercussions if it's not filed correctly or in a timely manner. State aid can be withheld, so I want to just point that out. A great job by his department. I've been informed by Scott Crisafulli, Chairman of the Transportation Advisory Committee, that they have selected 2 bus stop locations to install benches. They will be installed at the Shaws on Route 140 and at the high school. The benches will be provided by Josh Ahern as part of his Eagle Scout project. He will work with the Highway Department. The Highway Department will supply concrete and file the required application with DigSafe. Josh will provide all other materials, including the bench, as well as labor. Installation is anticipated to be done in the spring. I just want to thank Josh for selecting this as his Eagle Scout project. It will be a nice benefit for the town. I was asked by the board to update on 2 properties, 123 Princeton Drive. This property is scheduled for public auction on Thursday, March 15th at 10 a.m. The minimum price is set at $110,000. I will advise the board once the auction is complete. The second property is 49 Diller Street. This was auctioned on January 25th. The property was sold for the asking price of $90,000. The town received a deposit of $10,000 from the prospective buyer. He is now working with town council on the closing completion. And as Zach was alluding to before he left, Highway Surveyor Scott Christopherly has informed Zach and myself that the snow and ice budget unfortunately is in deficit. We would be looking for the board tonight to vote to allow the highway surveyor to continue to deficit spend, for the snow and ice budget. As the board knows, we do need a vote by this board now so that he can continue to do that. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, great.
If I could, I'm sorry. Mr.
Mike, any
Chairman,
questions?
Just, what was the date on the Dilla Street property?
That was done on January 25th. That was the date of the auction,
Thank
correct?
you so
Yeah.
much.
Any other questions, Mike?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions, Bill?
You know, it just came to mind that, we kind of take for granted that, an audit just happened, and, while we haven't seen the final audit report, all accounts are that it went great, and it was mutually cooperative. Then we look at the Schedule A effort, and, I don't, at the risk of being overly complimentary, I just want to call out Zach and his department for the great work that they're doing, keeping us financially on track, letting departments know where they are at any given time on their burn rates, quickly getting documentation into the state so that free cash certification happens timely manner. We're spoiled, and this is not happening in all communities. And I just want to say it's a compliment to the individuals that are working in that department, and not in addition to having IT and other responsibilities, it's not all just pure finance. What a great job's being done here. I know I went on and on a little bit too long, but I wished we'd have said it when they were here. And Rick reminded me with Schedule A.
I should have actually let him
No, that's
bring it
all right.
up as part of his presentation, but he asked that I do it, so.
And I think you need a motion, Rick?
I would like a motion, yes, to allow the highway surveyor to continue to deficit spend on the snow and ice budget, yes.
All right, given all the available options we've looked into, not spending on snow and ice in a deficit is not an option. I make a motion that we authorize Scott Christopherly to continue to spend in deficit on snow and ice.
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous.
Thank you.
Any other questions or
What the
comments, Bill?
options would be.
Right.
We'll be out there with shovels.
Yeah, we want
Make
it
a
to
lot
keep
of
going.
motions to ban all future snowstorms or something, I don't know.
Second that one.
Rick, my only additional question is something I spoke to you earlier about. If you would just let the board know, can you just give us an update on the town council search at this point?
Yes.
I know it's just started and
Yeah,
it doesn't expire
A
until,
couple more weeks. We have advertised twice, in fact, again in Lawyers Weekly today. We advertised 2 weeks prior to this. We have also advertised in the Beacon. Current town council has reached out to his organization. They have an organization called Listserv, where it goes up to a number of sources and attorneys. We have not received a lot of applications to date.
That's early.
I will tell you that, it's early. My tendency is I think people will wait for a number of reasons. I believe it closes on February 23rd. And that's pretty much where we're at currently.
okay. And the only reason I ask is because I know that, we have a letter that we're going to address pretty soon from the ZBA, asking for us to continue them using Jerry's services. I know the school department has. We're going to meet with the school building committee later on. So, the fact that some of these things are getting picked up and continuing to be worked on by Jerry, it at least makes me a little bit more comfortable that if, we haven't voted on any of this yet, but the fact that, we're getting less and less pressured by a deadline. If we can stick to our timeline and find the right people, then I think that's great. If not, at least with these bases being covered, if we have to, extend it or repost, I know what I'm looking for at the end, and I'm certainly interested in what my colleagues think. I think I know because we addressed that before the posting went out, but, you know, I'm hoping for at least a minimum of 3 to 5 solid candidates to get to us. So we have the screening committee. Hopefully, you know, that the original numbers that were predicted to me anyway, that, you know, when an opening like this happens in a municipality, that a lot of people will apply for the position. I hope that's the case, because I'm hoping that 5, 7 applications will come in and we say, hey, this one person might actually be the guy or girl or woman or whatever it is. I think that, you know, I'm hoping for really a solid group of candidates that gets to us. And maybe a month ago, I was a little bit more concerned than I am now when I'm getting these requests and Jerry's continuing these responsibilities on. So, I mean, obviously with the school system, that alone is a big responsibility. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if either of you want to comment at this point. Those are my feelings. I feel a lot less pressured at this point. Doesn't minimize the importance of the position, but everyone knows how the three of us have stressed the importance of this position. And I just want to make sure that, you know, we get the right group of candidates before the screening committee and obviously before us. And I want to make sure that we have actually a very good or difficult choice to make at the end.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, I would tell you if there's less than the number of candidates I hope for, you know, we've just got to stress with this screening committee, 3 to 5 candidates, you know, solid candidates where we have options, is our end goal. The other thing is we're going to make a suggestion that when we communicate to that, and maybe Rick can communicate for us, that we look for their timeline, what happens after the 23rd. What do you think is reasonable in terms of a timeline? Initial screen, reviews, interviews, secondary screens if necessary, whatever they think. I don't want to guide the process other than I want to have an understanding of the timelines, because there's a lot of things, while different boards may be picking up different responsibilities and looking for us to authorize work for Jerry specifically. There are a few things I want to avoid. Number one is, that's not all the legal service we're going to need.
Correct.
Right? There's an awful lot of voids and gaps, right? So we're going to have to, depending on that timeline, we're going to have to backfill.
Yeah.
We're going to need a plan that's going to manage the risk. And all the boards scrambling to try to pick up Jerry is understandable. The second thing is, I don't want to end up in a situation where, like a state job in some cases, you'll see a person retire from that position and the next Monday show up at their same desk doing the same work for consulting services for much more. So we have an obligation to backfill Jerry's position, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I want to send signals to various boards and committees that we understand what the concern is. We're prepared to deal with that. And number one, we are looking to hire a permanent counsel to replace him. And number two, we're prepared to go out and hire short-term, albeit qualified municipal attorneys to fill that gap. And this board should talk about that depending on what the team comes back with.
Right.
We should get information from that team so that we know how to adjust. And Rick, you know, I would be, you know, tell you to be ahead of the curve and say, you know, let's look at the top 3 recommended practices that handle municipal council, and see where we may be able to backfill. There may be a 30-day backfill or gap fill that we're going to need.
You know, if I can say, Bill, I'm very happy you brought that up, because actually that's the conversation Rick and I had as well, that he's already started looking at these things. No, but I'm glad you brought it up, because Rick had mentioned to me earlier that, you know, he's already planning and reaching out and at least collecting that information, because we probably, we very well could have a gap in service where, even if all of this other work is being handled during
Yeah,
a
if the stars align
transition.
perfectly, right?
It's still, we still need a
Could very
town
likely
council.
happen, yes,
Yeah.
no question.
And I don't think, and again, I think this is all very positive, because none of us need to be held hostage by a deadline that is gonna put us in a position of not hiring the best candidate.
And I like the idea of working through Rick on this, because I still, at the same time, while I want to ask this volunteer group of people that are gonna help us find counsel, I don't want to, I still maintain that I don't want to politicize it in any way, and I want them to have the freedom. That's why I'm asking them for their schedule.
Right,
Because
right.
I want it to be
Understood.
reasonable based on their availability, their time commitment. And so I think we're going to end up in a situation where 2 to 6 weeks are going to be a gap. Even in the best effort of anybody working reasonably, that's okay. And to your point, I'd rather give credence to the process and follow the process than try to expedite that process any faster, put pressure on people who have volunteered and who volunteered to serve the community, and also put pressure to where we're not doing the process justice and getting the right person. So let's take their recommendations, see what they come back with, and you have a plan B in your pocket where you're gonna, talk with some councils and get some rates or something.
I have a couple of.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess you would,
Firms
just
that-
naturally.
that we know do this municipal work.
And for the benefit of people who may be watching, there are lots of communities across the Commonwealth who don't have an on-board, full-time town council and use these services of contract services for legal counsel
Yes.
and representation. So it's a model that can work. It's not one that we've chosen for a lot of different reasons, and but it is certainly something that could be stopgap for us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
I think what's important, Mr. Chairman, is you spoke earlier about the importance of the position, and I agree with everybody. There's no need to rush. There's no need to rush, and to Selectman Buckley's point, if the search committee can't bring us back 3 viable names, a minimum of 3, start again.
Yeah, we'll rethink it.
Yeah.
No, and I'm glad you both feel that way.
Start again, because
I
there's
agree.
no, and again, to the point where there are many, many law firms, and Rick, I know I spoke to you earlier today, you've already had a couple of names, that if we were to need them, there's law firms out there that if we need to, can help us through the gap. But it's a very, very important person that's been filled by somebody for 39 years. That's a long time. So the person you want to put into that position, not only do you want to have municipal experience, you want them to be knowledgeable as well.
Yep.
And so at the end of the day, there's, again, I agree, and thank Jerry for, doing what he's doing with different boards, school department being one of them. Let's take our time, and let's do it right. Let's do it once. Let's not do it once, and then 6 months down the road, we're doing it again. Let's do it once and move on down the road.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is old business. I'm sorry, no, this is further down, okay. Old business is the Middle School East response to the RFP. Rick, I'm going to have you explain the process.
Yes,
If you don't mind. I think it's been in the press already, rightfully so, that I think a dozen folks took out the RFPs, but we got a single response back.
Correct. A number of firms, individuals did log on to the website and pull the RFP. It was open until January 25th. It was advertised in the Milford Daily News. It was advertised, obviously, in the Central Register. Again, number of firms, companies, individuals did pull it. We only received one bid. That was from Oberser Building Corp., 31 Whitewood Road in Milford. The bid amount was $115,000. I did go through the bid package. There were a number of requirements. They met them all: completed price form, for example, bid security, narrative, concept plan, development impact analysis, permitting strategy, their project team, certificate of non-collusion, tax compliance certificate, disclosure statement, corporate vote, and architectural conceptual plans. So they met the technical requirements of the bid package. Obviously, the board has reviewed the bid package. They had 2 concepts that they advanced to the board. One was commercial in nature, and the other was residential in nature. They are alternative strategies. Mr. Lobuser, I think, prefers one over the other, but obviously we'd have to speak with him concerning that. One of them would require a zoning change. That's the residential. The bid, again, is in front of the board. This is an opportunity for the board to discuss the bid that's in front of it. Again, it's the only one we received. It would have been nice to get.
I was just gonna say that, right? It would obviously been nice again for.
We did not. The building itself, we've had some issues recently with it, unfortunately, with severe cold. Pipes burst, and we had some water damage that we had to shut the water off, and we've done some cleanup in there to make it presentable. But other than that, the building is being maintained, it's being taken care of. Carlos, our facilities director, is doing a fine job of working on that. We don't have a regular crew in there by any means, but we are taking care of the needs of the building as they arise. So that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Okay. And I think, like you said, I mean, you know, just like we were talking about getting 3 to 5 candidates for the town council position, it would have been nice to get 3 or 5 competitive bids, but this is a qualifying bid. It meets all the standards, as whether it go to commercial or residential. I could certainly support both, or either one, I should say. You know, at our all boards meeting, it was interesting with representatives from the planning board and representatives from zoning, and then we've recently received an email from the chairman and the members of the Downtown Revitalization Committee regarding this proposal. And, you know, all 3 are pushing and trying to get not only the Board of Selectmen, but everyone involved here, including residents, to have residential properties or mixed-use properties on Main Street for foot traffic to aid and add to the revitalization efforts and things like that. So I'm happy that Mr. Lobuser presented 2 options. And I think even with, you know, I was even relatively, you know, satisfied, and you have to look at it the right way, of even getting the a payment of $115,000. I was actually afraid that we were going to get a very nominal amount, from anything from $1 to, you know, $10,000 or $20,000, because of the cost of actually taking down parts of the building and getting rid of whatever may be in that age of a building. I'm interested, obviously, hearing from my colleagues and what our options are for going forward. Bill, do you have anything to-
Yeah, I want to say this, I'm happy with the bid I have in front of me, because it involves a local builder who has done some outstanding, you know, projects in the community, stands by his work. I have faith in that individual. I also, maybe this is a diamond in the rough, and maybe not all builders are going to see that diamond as a local builder might, having gone in and out of that building with their children, gone in and out of that building when they were growing up, and gone in and out of that building for review. So I'm happy with the options we've been presented, and with as Rick stated, with a complying bid, a compliant bid for an RFP, it allows us latitude to work with that individual to try to salvage the building if possible. If it's not feasible to do that, it's not economically viable to the individual, I think the primary goal should be to, number one, get something back on the tax roll, get that property back on the tax roll. Number two, and a close second, is make sure that this town is not in the business of being landlords, managing a building. Municipalities generally are not good at managing empty buildings And so I want to get back on the tax roll just as fast as reasonably possible. So it meets all the goals I had in place. And, last and not least is the cost avoidance for us to have to continue to maintain that is going to be significant if we were to try to do anything with that building.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct.
We had estimated at our meeting, I know there was discussion, anywhere from $3 to $5 million to try to salvage that building because of various concerns with environmental concerns and other things. So Mr. Lobuser presents some interesting options here. Number one is to create existing plus 55 housing and salvage the older portion of that building, the one that's Main Street facing. And his other one is to, come in and demo that building to offer medical services space. So I find them both reasonable. As you said, Rick, there's some compelling zoning challenges.
There are with the residential option.
Right. But I see a lot of people, here's a case where there's a residential proposal that could save the building with all the parking worked out for it.
Right.
That's significant and significantly different than other proposals that we've seen at Town Hall in the past. I always bring up the Tom Building and the attempt to put residential housing on the top few floors and have nowhere to park a car.
Right.
As a matter of fact, nowhere to put the dumpster, let alone the bigger dumpster that would be required if there were residential houses there. So here's one that gives us mixed use on Main Street, close to the senior center, close to our churches and places of worship, close to where bus runs are, not going out of their way. I see a lot of opportunity here, and I can see a lot of people taking advantage of that type of housing that somebody local like Mr. Lobuser could build and would stand behind. And that doesn't rule out the possibility of a third proposal. And a third proposal, depending on how this is socialized with the zoning board and the planning board, might be a combination of both. Some mixed-use residential and, on a new building, commercial. It's not uncommon to see residential housing with some residential. That might be bakery, might be small store, might be a lot of things where people not only outside would come in, but people that are living there could take advantage of. So that's what I have. I'm encouraged by both proposals. I'm encouraged by what may become a reality working with zoning and planning. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I spoke to you earlier today, and I had some concerns about the process. I spoke to Rick later on this afternoon, and I know I'm sitting at the Selectmen's table, but to put on my school committee hat, I went home tonight and I pulled out the survey that was done by the company when we looked at it as a school district. Did we have any use for it? And they really couldn't pin it down either. So the more I thought about it, and I said, and Selectman Buckley's 100% right. As a community, we don't want to be in the landlord business. It's not our role. And I was very concerned about that. It was the only bid that came in. I was concerned, as I voiced earlier today with Rick, what is it really worth? Who really knows? When you look at what he's proposed, or what he's gonna do, I flip it the other way and I say, what's the expense that he's gonna incur? To either put it into housing, 55 and older, or rip it down and build a brand-new commercial building. I couldn't agree more. Everything that he does is first class. First class. You look at the new dental building that he did. You look at the homes that he does, you know, the developments that he does. You know, it's just a first-class organization. And the more I thought about it before I came to the meeting tonight, I just said, you know what, it's an offer. You don't want to be stuck with it. And I agree, I think we should move forward with it.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, that question will be asked a lot by residents. What's the actual value of that building? The only way I know of knowing that is to put it out to bid. And I would tell you, our empirical evidence is that while 12 people took out the package, 11 didn't return it. And I would tell you that this bid determined its actual value.
And I think what's important too, Bill, is when you talk about value, we determine value on what it's worth to you. You know, that's really what determines value. Do you have a use for it, meaning?
It's a market value.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
What's the market value?
Right.
In the same way that, while, you know, somebody selling a car would like to represent that they're going to dictate the terms of that sale, the fact of the matter is, market conditions and what other people are willing to sell it for are going to dictate what that value of that property is. So if their dollars can be better spent and utilized in other developments, then the value is that number right there. That's the value, because I know that because we put out a fair and a practical set of conditions for an RFP, and this is the response we got.
And I think what's important too for the general public to know is before we salvaged the building from the school committee side back to the town, we actually, that Saturday, Rick, remember, we took a tour of the building, and the residents have to understand the repairs that are needed in that building are huge.
Millions of dollars.
Huge, huge. And so, yes, I would move on that recommendation.
Yeah, I'm also very comfortable with it. Again, when I heard it was one bid, I was very skeptical. I went through the bid quite a few times. It's pretty impressive, and there really is, with those two options, it's actually a lot of options for people to factor in, especially, granted, if we could, you know, if it's so deemed that they could get through planning and zoning, maybe we can, obviously, Bill, you recommended, you know, let's hear from them as well. I think that's also for people who are concerned in town of wanting to hold on to that building and have an affection for it and the historical value of it. That's also, that option of 55 and over housing, quite honestly, saves that building as well. So I think that's something that's also going to be a discussion factor for a lot of folks.
I think what's important too is, and it just, as you said, that just came to mind, is that when Consigley Construction bought the old elementary school and took it apart block by block and then redid it down on Sumner Street,
Yep.
they actually had an open house one Sunday for
Oh, yeah.
people who had gone, and everybody was walking around saying, "Geez, this was my first grade classroom, this was," and that's not saying that that building couldn't be the same thing, that Kevin, if he does in fact, whatever direction he goes, if it is the 55 and older apartments, it doesn't mean we can't have the same kind of nostalgia. Because I know there are a lot of people in the community, in surrounding communities, that went to St. Mary's High School that are probably gonna be, oh boy, what are they doing? But you can have the same feeling, same feeling. You know, Anthony Consigley and Consigley Construction did a phenomenal job at that elementary school. That's not saying this building can't be the same.
No. And I'm one of another generation that went there for middle school. There was quite a few generations in between St. Mary's and now. And I mean, we were with Tommy Davern last night. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I still associate that building with Mr. Davern and you know, being one of the 8th graders through there. So I'm glad it's a local person, and I'm impressed with the bid. So I mean, do we want to have a motion going forward? Obviously, it seems like the support is unanimous, and then maybe we can talk about next steps.
Yeah, where we've not selected a particular one, nor do I think we are in a position to select a particular option. I think what we would need is feedback from zoning and planning as to what are the paths forward for each of these options. What are the requirements in order to achieve option A and option B? So it's really a path to yes, Rick. what's the path to yes for either option?
Each option.
Let's provide that feedback and let them, give them the opportunity to meet with the builder to hear and get his thoughts. But at the same time, I don't want to leave this proposal on the table and open-ended for the builder either. I want the builder to see some type of commitment. So I'm going to recommend, and the board can discuss it, that we sign a letter of intent with the builder. Let him know that pending town meeting approval, that we intend to go forward with the sale of that building. And what we're looking for is just the specifics on which option or a combination of options, getting zoning opinion and the zoning board of appeals position, because they would be invoked on one of them, and planning on the other side.
Bill, I'm sorry, would
Go
we
ahead.
need town meeting approval at this point?
Yeah, to disposition to the town property.
We didn't do that?
Can you review
Yeah,
that?
we've
I'll
gone out
review
to
that.
bid.
I thought we
I think we
agreed
did,
that we would.
'cause I don't
put
think
the
we could have
building up
gotten
for
to this
sale.
stage.
Yeah.
You're right.
I can double check,
At least
but
I,
I.
at least I hope,
know what?
I hope we did
You know
all.
what? You're right, so.
No, we can.
So pending discussion, let me do it this way. Pending discussion with zoning and planning, it's our intent to move forward with.
Accept the bid.
Accept the bid,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
So do we accept the bid and then have him go through that? Because there are two viable options, so we can accept
You
the
know what I-
bid, or how?
You know what I'd like to do, get the letter of intent out to them, just so that it outlines what we intend to do, when we intend to do it. And let's leave, a 30-day window where we're talking with planning about which of the two options are most viable, and then go right to purchase and sale.
Yeah, the actual RFP does provide for 30 days.
Yeah, let's take
before
that
you
30
need
days.
to execute a purchase and
I
sale.
just wanted to know
So you could
what
accept.
this board's
Intent is.
intent is, and, just so he's not hanging out there. And it puts a clock, it starts a clock with us.
Yeah.
And maybe even our next meeting, have him come in and just give us.
I would like that.
I would like that, too.
Yeah.
He
If
was
the board
actually
were to
willing to come
accept-
in tonight. Rick
us
let
a
me
little
know, but
explanation.
I just said, why don't we put a hold on
Yeah.
that so the three of us can talk?
Yeah.
So if we
Let
could
him know
invite
we're in
Mr.
his
Lobuser
corner,
in.
but bring him in.
Okay.
Let's have a conversation.
Great.
Okay.
Hope you didn't mind. I just didn't want him here tonight while
No,
we didn't know
no,
how
no,
we were
that
gonna
works.
hash it out, so.
And I
That
would
works.
second that.
All right, and I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous.
So that's with the letter of intent and socializing with the zoning and planning. Good.
And he'll be on the next agenda.
Yeah, that'll be the 26th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna take the 30 days roughly. Okay.
Good
Any,
extent, yeah.
any other old business, Bill?
No, none from me, Mr. Chairman.
Mike?
I have none.
Okay, nor do I. Moving on to new business. Town administrator received a memo from our town clerk, Amy Neves, looking for an insert for the tax bill regarding election days, which she's been making a lot of efforts going forward, advertising our elections, trying to increase the participation.
Move, Mr. Chairman?
I would second that, please.
I'll also vote in favor, and that's unanimous. Papagino's 42 Cape Road is requesting to increase their automatic amusement license from 2 games to 3.
Move, Mr. Chairman?
I'll also vote in favor and make that unanimous. We also.
Paused.
I did. We received a gift for the Milford Fire Department from the Birch Hill Condominium Complex for $100.
I'll move, Mr. Chairman, to accept.
I would second that as well, and as always, we do send a letter out.
Absolutely.
We do, yes, we do, yeah.
And I'll vote in favor as well and make that unanimous. And I spoke of this earlier, we have a letter from the Vice Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Charles D'Antonio. Dear Chairman Kincaid, at our meeting last evening, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted unanimously to request that the Board of Selectmen consider allowing our board to retain the services of Town Council Jerry Moody after the date of his retirement for the duration of our hearings in regards to the 40B application of Rob Sham Village. If you have any questions or would like to discuss this further, I am available to meet at your convenience. No, and I appreciate that, Mr. D'Antonio. I don't feel that we have to meet. I think we covered that today, but I do understand why they want to obviously continue to use
Mr. Chairman?
Jerry Moody during this application process.
Yeah, my suggestion is to put some bounds around it, though, right? Because these processes can take, weeks, months, or years. So my suggestion is that while we agree with them, we're talking about filling a gap and trying to maintain continuity. At some point, there's a chance that this is going to have to be transferred over to another council. So whatever time this board feels reasonable, I think we should put some boundary on it.
They can always come back to us and
ask
revisit it
again,
at that
right?
time.
So
Yeah,
why don't we-
I don't have a problem with it either. I just don't know what a realistic timeframe is. Is
Well,
it to the
I
end of
would-
the fiscal year? Is it?
I would say, Mr. Chairman, I'd like them to explain to us what they mean by duration of our
Yeah.
hearings.
Okay.
What does that mean? You know?
Okay.
I think the next one's not until April, if I recall. And then that may not, that, I don't think is the last one anyway, so I think.
Okay, well, we can either get more information or do it clean, like to the end of the fiscal year, and then they can come back, or we can, do you want to ask for more information?
The end of the fiscal year is not bad and allows for transition time, and we can always revisit it and, like you said, extend.
All right, so let's do it through June 30th,
30.
2018.
That's
Mike,
pretty
you
reasonable.
comfortable with that?
Good, yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Motion and a,
Motion?
okay,
And I vote in favor and make that unanimous.
thank you.
And it can be revisited, just so they know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with that, yeah.
I don't have any other correspondence, I don't think.
No.
So we do have an executive session tonight. We're going to be meeting with the town council regarding the water company, our firefighters regarding grievances, the Woodland School Building Committee, and the town council regarding dispatchers, not necessarily in that order. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn and go into executive session for the purposes that you outlined.
Second?
I also vote in favor, and that's unanimous. Roll call.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night. We will not be returning to regular session.